All right, day 16. I am going to go ahead and git commit. So 1 second, we will git commit. We've got a lot to commit. Git add, git commit, day 16, start. Okay, and I just tried to push, but I don't have a remote repo for this yet, so we'll take care of that in a bit. I want to talk about a couple things today. So yesterday we got our, I know we just got our quotes back in the right order. We're going to jump up that order now, so it's not a bunch of Marcus Aurelius back to back to back to back. There are a couple different ways that we could approach this. I'm going to take it and approach it in the simplest way, which compromises all of our past quote entries. So at this point, we will be, if you keep your data, they will no longer match the quotes that you had originally chosen for them. So if you've been using the app, consider it something you're testing, and that's great. And just be aware that with anything you're testing, at some point you may throw away your data or you may lose your data. And we're at that point now. So what I'm going to do, this is probably the easiest way that you could approach this. And the reason we're approaching it this way is because we don't want two things. We don't want our application to have to worry about this. And then if our application does this every time it loads the quotes, it can't deterministically decide how the ordering should be. So what I'm going to do is we're going to just hang out together and have some fun. I'm going to hold down Option and Shift. Oops, that's not the right one. I'm going to hold down Option or the Alt key if you're on Windows. And I'm just going to take some of these and we're going to scoot them around. So if you hold down, like if you click on one of these and then hold down the Option key or the Alt key and then some arrows, you can move them like so. And I don't necessarily mind having several Marcus Aurelius quotes together or several Epictetus quotes together. And I do feel like in the spirit of programming, maybe we should take a different approach here. So let's do that. We'll see how this goes, and if this ends up being bad, I don't know, maybe we'll just throw this video away too. So I just undid all these changes. You know what? Let's actually code something, right? So we have a couple options. I'm going to add a tool method to a tool folder to our project. And I'm just going to click here and add one called tool. And we can take a couple different approaches here. Probably the simplest would be to write a Dart method or a Dart function that is executable and can take care of this for us. And I guess we could do that. I kind of want to write something else and maybe mix it up, try something fun. But I also, like if we were to use Go or something like that, you'd also have to have Go installed on your machine. So we'll just do Dart, I guess. So I'm going to create a new file called shuffle CSV. I'm going to add a main method like so. I'm going to take a file, and the path will be //assets/quotes.csv. And we'll do a couple interesting things. So I'm going to set this equal to file. Final contents equals file.read as strings. We can synchronously do this. We can asynchronously do this. I'm just going to do it synchronously. It's a one-off script that we're just running in this one case. So we'll read it as a string, and then we'll get the contents, and we will get the lines, which is contents.split, and we split on a line break, which is a \n. Now that we have the lines, we want to get the quotes, which is lines 1 lines.length. I'm sorry, what am I writing? Lines.sublist. Oh, and we just want the start, so we just want to start at 1. This will remove the header for us, right? And then we can say final header equals lines dot first. We'll rewrite the header back out whenever we shuffle these. Now that we have our quotes, we can call quotes.shuffle. This will modify the list in place. Shuffles the elements in this list randomly, so we don't need to store this in a value. And then we will want to join everything again. And the way that we'll join that is we can create a new list like so. So we have our header and we have our quotes. I'm just going to say final finished. And then we have file.write as string sync, synchronously writes, opens the file, writes the string, and closes. By default, creates the file for writing, truncates the file if it already exists. Perfect, that's what we want. We want to overwrite this. And then this becomes finished. Oh, can't be, yep, that's fair. We need to join these on a line break. Okay, so yeah, this should be good. I'm gonna do one thing before we accidentally lose all of our quotes. Since what we're doing is we're reading a file into memory, modifying the order of the contents of that file, and writing it back out over the values that are already there, I am just going to copy this and then paste this so we have a copy. That way, if we ruin our file, we still have our quotes in order and we can try again. If you're using VS Code, you can probably click run here, or if you are in your terminal, you can type change directory into tool, dart run, shuffle csv.dart. Okay, it finished. We probably could add something like print shuffled CSV successfully. Something like that. So if you run it again, you'll see shuffled CSV successfully. Now, if we look at this, we've got Aurelius, Kant, Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Seneca, Zoo, Rufus. This is pretty good. This is pretty well shuffled. Let's run it one more time. CSV, shuffled CSV successfully. Herodotus, Epictetus, Aurelius, 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 Zeno, Zoo, Epictetus. Shuffle it again. Okay, Rufus, Seneca, Zeno, yeah. Okay, this is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this one. I guarantee, yeah, so there's like 3 zoos in a row, whatever, that's fine. The 2 Aureliuses here in a row, 2 more, that's fine. There are a lot of Marcus Aurelius quotes in here, so, and a fair amount of Seneca quotes, so it's fine. There's a very good chance that they will be back-to-back in some cases because there's just so many of them. So great, we've shuffled up our quotes. We are going to do a couple really quick things. So the first one is I am going to restart this again. And if we get lucky, we might see that this is not the right value for this. It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness. Oh, what a great quote. Life is neither good nor evil. This is a quote for a Marcus Aurelius quote, something about good or evil. Yeah, life is neither good or evil. So this is not the right quote. So we're going to do 2 things. One, we're going to allow people to delete all of their quotes in the settings view. Or not all of their quotes, all of their quote entries. So let's go to settings.dart. Sorry, settingsview.dart. And we're going to add a new section. So we'll copy this value and we'll change this one to say data. And instead of a switch tile, it'll be settings tile. Okay. And we'll give this an icon. Is there a bomb icon? That would be kind of cool. There's not. How about a trash can? Yep, okay. Delete all quote entries, or delete all journal entries. Okay, so now if we save this, we hit on this right here, we can see, sorry, this being the quote gear, or the settings gear, we can see data, delete all journal entries. We can click this, nothing happens, that's fine. That's because we need to add an onPressed. So let's do that. We'll add an onPressed right here. It gets a build context. That's considerate. And then we want to take settings view model dot, instead of save settings, delete all content, delete all journal entries. And we don't really need settings here, so we'll just call this like so. We need to add this method. Code actions are really helpful here. So I clicked on delete all entries, command period, delete all journal entries, create that method. It's not AI or anything super clever, so it didn't actually fill it out for us, but in our case, it did add a method stub for us to come in and fill out. So what we want to do is we have reference to our settings box here, and then we want to return, well, let's think about how we want to handle this. We need our quotes, and we have our quote view model referencing like some stuff from our settings box, right? Am I wrong here? Settings. Yeah, so it's got this method called get settings, and this just reads the settings from the Hive box. So maybe what we want to do, let's clean up a little bit. We'll add a new settings service .dart under settings. We'll create a class called settings service. You might consider this an unnecessary abstraction, but what I would like to do here is the services are going to take care of accessing data for us. And the reason that's important is because if things need data from a different module, the only thing they have to import is the service. That way we don't have like boxes being opened by other things, and all of the box management will happen in that single settings service. So we have a couple things. We have this get settings method, and then we also have a save settings method and load settings. We'll keep load settings here. And what we will do is we will copy these. Again, copy, don't cut, because we're going to need these, specifically the save settings method. We'll have to modify that. We come back here, we paste this into our settings service, and then we need a couple things, right? We clearly need our box, and we need to import settings, so we can go ahead and import settings. And then we need our box, and this doesn't exist. It's not going to exist here. So we'll go ahead and remove that. Now if we go back to our settings view model, we need to get our box, and we should do this in a way where our settings view model doesn't need access to our box anymore. So we'll go ahead and remove that from settings view model, and we'll go to our settings service and paste it here. We need to import Hive, and get settings needs to not be private because anything could use that. And now if we go back to our settings view model here, we have a reference to that box. We don't want this, right? What we want now is to call our settings service. So we can create a new instance of our settings service here. Settings service equals settings service. Okay. Man, I'm so much happier with how this is turning out than the video from a couple days ago. We can make our box private. In fact, we should. So we'll do that in a minute. So we want to save settings, and this takes in settings. So we just pass that in right there. Load settings triggers a reload, so we do want to keep that here. And you can see that load settings calls this get settings method. And then down here, we want to, well, this is really all it's doing is getting the value, which we just wrote a service for. So we don't need to inline this anymore. And instead, we can await settings service.getSettings. Let's clean up one thing. So if we click into our settings service here, let's just make box private. That way, no one is accessing the box directly, and they're going through these methods that we put on the service. Okay, this is all well and good. This doesn't really help us with our delete all of our quote data. So the reason I did this was this is simpler than our quote view model by a long shot, but we're going to do the same thing now with our quotes. So we're going to create a quote service, .dart, class quote service, and we will pick and choose from our view model what we need. So, oh, this is interesting. In our view model, we have a reference to get settings. So what we can do here, instead of calling get settings, is maybe, interesting. So we're just calling it right here. So instead of, oh no, sorry, we do still want that in our view model because our view model needs to return the setting stuff, but we don't want to access the box directly. Instead, what we would rather do is create a settings service instance. And you could make this static and reference this statically if you'd like. I like instantiating the class here because if we need any dependencies, we can pass them in, and then we can mock it for tests and other fun stuff like that. So we have a settings service dot, oh, one extra T there on accident. Settings service dot get settings, and it just needs to return this value. Okay, pretty happy with that. So now we have a couple different things. Basically, any piece of box-related functionality we want to pull out to our settings service. I'm sorry, our quote service. And the easiest way to do that is to grab the box, cut it, and then go to our quote service, paste the box right here, import everything we need to import. So we need quote entry and we need hive. Okay, now if we go back to our quote view model, we've got a bunch of little red squiggles on the overview over here. These red little rectangles indicate areas where there are code errors. So we are storing in two different locations, and then we are fetching. And this is the quote entries, right? So what we are doing here is, quote service. So we need two methods. We essentially need get quote entries for quote. And then we need a save quote entries. Okay. And let's go back to our view model and see what those look like. So we have a quote that gets passed in here. So we'll use that here. And then we have box.get quote ID. So if we go back to our service, quote. Okay, that one's pretty good. We just need to return the value here. And then this is dynamic because we don't have a type for it, but we know the type, right? It's a future of maybe a quote entry, or maybe null. And then we have save quote entries, which is up here, and it takes in a quote ID and a quote entry. Simple enough. So we'll go back to our quote service and we'll add a quote, and then we will add entry with date time, entry with date time. We'll take these and we will put those in our service. We don't need to await this. Instead, we want to return it. This is just a future void, so we'll go ahead and put the type here. And then quote entry is actually called entry with date time in this context. Can't be assigned to quote entry. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not entry with date time. It is actually quote entry. And then this will be quote entry. And then this will be quote entry. I forgot that quote entry wraps entry with date time in a list. Okay, so we've added a service that manages our data for us. So now that we're here, let's go ahead and update these so it's actually referencing them. So we want await, well, before we await this, up here at the top, I'm going to add in our view model a quote service. Let's see, final quote service. And then just to talk a little bit more about why we're instantiating this as a property, generally you probably wouldn't want to instantiate this in line like this. You would probably pass this into your view model, and then you would pass a service implementation into your view model. That way, whenever you want to test your view model, you can make tests around your view model and pass in a fake service to fetch your data. Generally a pretty good practice. I know we haven't spent a ton of time writing tests, and I don't know if we will, because we are a little strapped for time at this point, but that's why I'm making these code choices, is testability. And maybe in the future, we might add some tests to this as part of another video. So we want to save quote entries. We can pass in the quote, and then we can pass in new entry, which once we do that, we can remove this line. We can copy this, paste it here, but this is not called new entry in this context. It's called quote entry. Okay. And we're still good with calling load all quotes. Get quote entry for quote. Does anything use this? Get quote entry for quote, get quote entry for quote. Yeah, it's used in both of these. Okay, so we will keep that as is. That private method is probably pretty useful. And instead we will return quote service dot get entries for quote, and then we'll pass in our quote. And now there's no box management at all here. Part of the reason this is really nice is we can go to our quote service now, and we can say future, I would assume it's void, delete all quote entries. And then this will return box dot, and I would imagine there's, yeah, delete all, delete from disk, flush, so many options. So let's look at what these do. Deletes a given key, deletes all the given keys, removes the file which contains the box and closes the box. What does clear do? Removes all entries from the box. That seems pretty good. I think that's probably what we want. So we will call clear. And now we have this quote service that removes all of this for us. I guess one thing to be aware of here is, actually this works out pretty well because LazyBox returns previously open boxes. But anytime that we create a new quote service, we're calling this again. If this had like a lock on it or something, or was maybe more poorly implemented, we would want to figure out a solution so we're sharing the box across services. So you could make that static. You could find other ways to handle that. But in our case, LazyBox returns the opened box, so it's a reference, which is great. Okay, now that we're here, we can go to our settings view model. We have delete all journal entries, so we can create an instance of our quote service. Let me just retype that. That was really poorly typed. So final quote service equals quote service. Quote service dot delete all entries. This will delete all of our entries. In theory, this is all wired up. So we can do a couple things. I can hit delete all entries, and in theory, it just deleted everything. So let's get back to this one. The value should be 1. Okay, it didn't delete everything. Or, hear me out, it did, but our data that our views were using didn't refresh. Yep, it's not there now. It's not there now. So if we delete everything, we need to let our views know. That's going to be the trickiest part. We do have a couple different options there. But before we get to that point, I want to do one more thing. We're going to put this in a dialog. Is there a confirm dialog? Confirm dismiss callback. Alert dialog. You know what? Let's just see what our options are for dialogs. Show dialog, about, alert, simple, date picker dialog. That's nice. I don't remember which one's which. Let's pull up the widgets. Flutter, widget, catalog, dialog. Oh man, I hope we are recording. Okay, we are recording. I'm shocked. My CPU is so low there. Okay. Show dialog. Okay, that's great. I want a alert dialog. What are we working with? Optional list of actions. Okay, that sounds great. So let's go ahead and add in an alert dialog. So we want to show dialog. So we have our context, we have a builder which gets a context. And then we need to return an alert dialog. We don't need any icon, it's a title, we can give it a title. Really delete all entries. Okay. Oh, this needs to be a widget. So we can wrap this in a text. And then we want something like actions. And then these probably need to be buttons. So we'll do like text button on pressed. And then we'll do another text button with an on press. comma to separate these. This one will be text that says yes. This one will be text that says no. Okay, and then in our, did we remove that already? Oh, we did. Okay, so in yes, we will call settings viewModel.delete all journal entries. This returns void, which isn't true. It returns a future of void, right? Future void, future void. Okay. And we can await this. And we want to go ahead and get an instance of our navigator. Navigator.of ctx. And then we want to call navigator.pop. You'll see one thing to talk about really quick. In builders like this, I always refer to the inner context as CTX and the outer context as context. This lets me have access to both of them, should I need both of them for anything. Generally, when you're popping like a dialog away, you want to use the inner. So I grab the navigator of the inner, and then after we run this, we pop it. So that's yes. We can make this a const so it doesn't yell at us. And then if we say no, all we need to do is navigator.of context.pop. Basically the same thing, except we don't actually delete the content. We can make this a const too, to clean that up. Oops, and now if we pull up our settings view, it will prompt us, and you can say yes or no. If you say no, nothing happens. If you say yes, it deletes them. There's no indication that it deletes them outside of you pressing that, but that's fine. What we need to do is we probably need to figure out a way to reload our data. And I'm not sure how we want to handle that. So maybe that would be a good place to pick up tomorrow after I have some time to think on that. So yeah, let's do that. Okay, thanks for sticking with me. We will pick up tomorrow and probably tackle how we want to reload our data once we do delete it. Another thing we probably will look at in the future is allowing you to delete individual journal entries. So we'll sort that out too. And we'll kind of take things from there and see where they go. Thanks for sticking with me. I know the last video before this one was a little weird, but I'm really appreciative of you taking the time to stick with me and all that you have given me feedback-wise. Several friends have reached out about just the series, and it's nice. It's nice to hear that people are actually watching it. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. There's a bell icon. Hit that bell icon to make sure you are notified of every single video that I publish. And I'm excited to do some new stuff at the start of next year. So if you're burnt out on Flutter, we'll be mixing it up with some more fun stuff. And then comment down below. Let me know, what problems are you running into with your app? Is everything going okay? Do you need help with anything? The comments are a great place to tell me, and I'll be sure to read every single one. Thanks, and have a great rest of your weekend.